Right, this is going to be the newest and the final episode of the Best Damn League show for 2023. We will be back potentially in 2024. Nothing ominous about that. I just don't know if we will. There's a lot of time between now and then. Obviously,
we could all die.
Show, that's true. We could all die. If we're all dead, though, I wouldn't worry about it at that point in time. We're not here, are we? So there's no point worrying about that. If anything, the real problem is just if one of us dies. So basically, without breaking TOS, if I die, Dom, just see you in the afterlife. We'll do the show there. You're not obliged to, but if you're available, I'll call.
Yeah, I'm down. I'll have nothing better to do at that point anyway. Might as well keep it going.
When I say freeze pipe, those aren't directing options on a porno set. But in a sense, I am adopting the missionary position because I want to tell you about the good news about the freeze pipe, which is a metaphorical savior when it comes to allowing you to enjoy cannabis smoke without the irritation of having hot smoke in your lungs. Because, of course, the freeze pipe has its classic technology where you take the food safe glycerin chamber, you put it in the freezer section for a mere hour, it cools the smoke by around 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you just get to have an enjoyable smoking experience. 10% off with the code LFN at thefreezepipe.com. Also, if you go and check there, I think it's in a couple of days they're all actually available, but you can probably pre-order. They've got the vape pen, which doesn't even use smoke at all. It has little cartridges, and they've got the blunt tip if you like to smoke blunts or joints. Right. Obviously, like I say, Dom, this is the last episode of the year. And you know what's fucked up? I don't know where you're at, so I want to get a sense of your, the temperature check, as it were, on this last episode. Because I'll tell you something weird, mate. Even though this year, there have been a lot of episodes where we were really negative, down on teams, stuff like that, I have to say, as much as on some of the insight, I did still basically predict everyone except G2 was probably not even going to win a fucking game at Worlds, against the good teams. So in a way, I'm on a downer. But actually, I have to say, the way the finals weekend went, actually, I thought was quite positive. I actually thought overall, in a way, G2 did restore a bit of my faith that they are way better and they might be able to have the odd game they can win. I also actually thought even Fnatic had some positive signs once we get into some of the players of sort of some light in the dark. I mean, fucking Humanoid actually started playing League of Legends, what did you think, though? What was your general sense of the weekend? Because basically coming into it, partly because of the format of having to wait every week for 2 matches, I did kind of feel like it was killing my, sort of vibe at the end of the season. And I was really worried that G2 was going to beat everyone, but do it in such a shitty way that actually I sort of wouldn't even believe in them. But I think at the end, they sort of saved it for me. I kind of do feel like at the end, they did look really good to me at times.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the main thing that I was happy with G2 is that they didn't have that one awful game. The one game that they lost, it's not like they just played fucking terribly. I mean, it just felt like, maybe the Sivir wasn't the strongest pick there. It didn't, get to the point where it's able to carry the game. And Yone is a relatively risky champion in competitive play. So they didn't have that awful draft, and they didn't have any of the games that they were having before where even though they won, it looks like they should have lost. Those are the games that I really hate, are the ones where it's oh, you only won because this other team sucks. Yes. It's not that you're actually a dominant team. So at least in their 3 wins, I think they looked good. They were competent. There were some areas that were not clean, but at least they put the whole game together. They were able to get an early lead in most of the games. They're able to out skirmish, which has always been their biggest strength. If you go back to Winter, that was what you looked at G2 for. It was for the fact that they knew how to, get leads and carry on the leads. And then, by the last game, it felt like they just put everything together. I mean, they were just playing the best team, and they deserved to win.
No, I thought they actually just had a fabulous final. Even though there's the one game where, like you say, people are going to think oh, it's just classic G2, they just ran it down. I actually agree with you. First of all, that was a close game. I mean, they still just needed one big team fight to win the whole game. Secondly, that was actually, it makes sense that G2 lost that one, dude. That was easily the best start of the game for Fnatic. They looked fucking great in that one. That actually was the dream start for them. And if anything, I'll actually spin it the other way, Dom, to how most people probably perceive that. I'm with you. First of all, I thought the Yone pick, it's a bit of a reach anyway, and actually Craps did quite well on it. And then secondly, if you actually look at that game, here's how I would characterize this, that it actually makes G2 even more scary to me. Because if you look at this final, right, here's how this final went. When you had the first games that G2 just gets the mega early start, the game's over. Like, you just can't get back in the game if you're Fnatic. Then if you have this game, the third game, that's basically where finally Fnatic gets the nice start and they win the game, but even then G2's in the game and has a chance to win. Then on the last game, you actually have an even early game and then it's just G2 winning. Like, at that point in time, like, does G2, essentially, can G2 only lose if they get mega far behind early? Like, that makes them look unbeatable, Dom. And we're saying it's not even like it's their strongest draft. Like, they're obviously experimenting with what they do in the draft. And there's another thing, mate. Their draft control by the time we got to this final, like, they just made these other teams look stupid, mate. It was bad enough some of the stuff before with like the blind Braum picks. But like, Mickey X isn't even just doing this conditioning. He can actually just pick that fucking Lysandra and it's good. It's actually just good. Yeah. Like, no one else plays him. It's just good when he picks it. Like, they just look mega G2.
Yeah, he just picks it into Rakan. Like, that's what he's looking for. He's looking for specific matchups where he can actually, make do with the champion. I think that the other thing about that game 3 that should be considered is like how strong Fnatic's draft is. If you just think about how good these champions are in each role, right? Like, their draft is Renekton, one of the best top laners, if not like the best top laner right now. Maokai, been one of the best junglers, probably second in prio next to Ivern right now in the jungle. Azir, top tier pick, and then Kai'Sa Nautilus is their bot lane. Like, they had insane champions. And then also, if you look at G2's side of things, they have Rakan, who is, really susceptible to point and click CC. And like we just said, they have a Maokai, Renekton, and Nautilus on the other team. So it's very hard for the Rakan to actually have a lot of value here. And Yone is also susceptible to the same point and click CC that Fnatic has a lot of like on their team comp. So that's a game where I think like you're gonna end up in certain situations where you do get out drafted. And if you lose that game but you make it competitive, it doesn't weigh on me the same way as like the Eve game or the Fiddle game from the previous series that we saw them play. So I just wanted to like round that out because like this is just one of those things where if you do like try to go deep into a draft and an enemy team is smart and they understand exactly what your win conditions are, what you like to play. Fnatic banned out the Kalista, the Kog'Maw, and the Draven, 3 of Hans's best champions, and like the Sivir pick just wasn't that useful in this game. I think that this is an acceptable game to lose. Like that's a different game to me than the ones they were losing before is my main point.
Yes. So like I say, I actually come out of this. I'm feeling pretty good about G2. I even think in this final, mate, you could make a case every single player played well. Like, I don't think anyone really had, like, more than one bad game, or even then, like, barely one bad game. Like, Broken Blade looked awesome in the first few games. Caps was good throughout all the games, too, even on the one they lost. Yike actually, I thought, one of his best series of the year. He looked awesome. Like, he had some great moves he pulled. And Mickey X was great. Maybe not as awesome as he was at other times, but he certainly had some very good early games. And Hans Sama, I mean, even did he play the Draven to close the series? Like, what? You couldn't really ask for more from G2, but I thought it looked great. Everything looked awesome. Coaching staff, players.
I was a little down on Hans Sama, if I'm being honest. I didn't like how he played in game 1, for example. It felt like he was dying way too much in that game. Game 2, I mean, he ended up with like 10 kills. Everyone's going to see a 10-0 scoreline and be like, oh my God, he popped off. But really, like, the whole team was just smurfing on them. Like, they were just so far ahead that he was just the recipient of the kills. And in the final Draven game, like, he made a pretty crucial mistake when he, over chased to try to kill the Xayah. Ivern was there, died, like lost his, I believe he lost his sums. He obviously lost his life and his stacks at that point. So I think that like Hans didn't have the best series, but everyone else looked, like they looked like they were all just on form.
Also, like I say, let me think. What was I going to ask on this question? Oh, that's right. I actually have a question about champ balance for you, which is, right, mate, it was bad enough when we had that other match where it was like the Mad Lions versus G2 one, and then Broken Blade just smurfed on fucking Chasey with Cassante. I want to ask you, is that champion actually broken? Because there's that moment in, I think it was game 1 even, where Noah on Aphelios, I think he did, there's even like a tower hit gone on the Cassante. He just gets 1v1 by Broken. You know the one I'm on about, where Noah tried to flash over him and just got complete.
Where Noah just stood there and auto-attacked?
Like, if people don't know, I think Noah had like 2 kills at this point in time, like a little bit fed. The Cassante had 0 kills. It was up in levels, I will say, so it like, had farm or whatever, but like, should it really be able to like 1v1 like that? The top player with no kills?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's like how top lane. I think that's
it was early enough in the game, but just
I mean, almost like any like that kill doesn't bother me that much about Cassante. I mean, I think the thing that bothers me about Cassante is like the amount of mobility that he has as a tank. Like, it seems really absurd if somebody is good at using their like WE Q3 flash and then you get the W reset once you ult. It just seems like really oppressive to have that amount of mobility, and it's really hard to lock him down, obviously, because he has 2 unstoppables essentially in his kit. But I mean, like those types of kills, I mean, I just expect that to happen. I mean, if you're an AD carry and you end up in a 1v1 situation with a top laner and you're down levels, you should just lose to like all the top laners, in my opinion. You should lose to Aurelia, Camille, Jax, Cassante, Renekton. Like, if you don't lose to those champions, then I feel like, you know, top lane needs to be buffed or something, because that's like what those champions are built to do. I mean, AD carries can't be the strongest in team fights and the strongest at 1v1 and like, you know, the ones that determine like who gets Herald in pro get, like it can't have that much agency. So I was okay with that, but I do think Cassante is like, it's definitely super strong. It is broken, but it's not like unplayable. Like I thought Wonder actually did really well in the lane phases. If Fnatic was a better team and they could use the leads that Wonder was actually getting in lane, I think that, you know, they would have had a chance to win, because Wonder was playing really well. I mean, I think he was the best performer on Fnatic for the entire series, which just says something about the class of player that he is, that he could just jump in and like, yeah, and just immediately be like looking like the best or the second best top laner in the entire league. But yeah, I mean, like Cassante, if you mess up against Cassante, it's just one of those champions that will just become unkillable, ridiculous. It's just going to look like the most OP champion in the game.
Yeah, on the Wonder thing, actually, this is how I would describe it. Like, first of all, I agree with you. I actually think, like, from the beginning of the first series he played against Fnatic, against Mad Lions, he just got better and better as all the games. And by the time he got to the final, like, if you just took the nameplates off there, Dom, and just said, this is the top laner that was on the second best team all year long, you would believe it. He looked good. In fact, I'd even say this just shows what a big game player he is as well. Because I made a point on some of the insight that I feel like a lot of people are going to miss, which is Oscarinin was actually one of the better players for Fnatic the last split or so, right? He actually was one of the reasons why they were good. But people are taking it for granted that, like, he would have done what Wonder did in this final and more. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. First of all, he's a rookie. He hasn't even played a whole year. And these are stage matches, guys. Like, I'm not going to say he wouldn't, but I have to see it happen before I can give him that status. I actually think low-key, it actually ended up being, I mean, I'm not going to spin it into the whole topic of like, why was Wonder allowed to play? That's a separate issue. But I actually think this gave Fnatic a better chance of winning, mate, because actually Wonder did play like a fucking vet. And he played it like you want him to do. Like, he played only the champions he's really good at classically. He didn't need any resources. Mate, this is why you could have believed it was like 2 years ago. He also is like right back to like, you can't fucking dive him status. Like, there's one of those things for top laners that I think's a marker that you're a great top laner. Like, my boy Flame back in the day was amazing at this. The Shy's pretty good at it. Like, it's not just that you can carry or you can weak side. Like, if you are undivable, like some of these guys are, man, that psychologically does something to your opponent, because you can see, it's like when teams start going in, as soon as the first person fucks up or gets a tower hit, you can almost see them panic, dude. You can almost see the other players like, oh shit, it's happening again. And it just happened. Like, mate, this guy's undivable. It's mental. It's actually absurd how good this guy is. I agree. I think he probably was overall the best player for Fnatic in the series, not least because like his job was, that he's saying, just lose gracefully. Whereas like people like Razork, who actually think have been pretty good, even Humano's good, they just were like behind every game, mate. Like Razork had a nightmare simulator in this final, mate. What the fuck?
I mean, it felt like,
I think so many of these games just feel like he's behind immediately. He has no chance.
Yeah, I mean, there were hard games for him, but generally when your team is just outclassed early game as a jungler, you're gonna fall far behind. I would say the thing that was so impressive about Wonder's performance was that when a player takes a long break like this and they come back, right, and they're a veteran player, what you expect is that they're going to know how to play the game, like mid to late game. They're going to understand, like, you know, what to do, because that's the part that doesn't really go away. That's the knowledge part of the game. But the thing that you would think would be their weakness would be their lane phase. Like, how do they actually get to the point in the game where they're going to be relevant? Are they just going to be permanently behind every single game in lane because, you know, the other guy's been practicing the whole time and like Wonder wasn't even playing the game? The thing that was so impressive to me about Wonder's play was that he was just winning lane, like the actual 1v1 lane he was winning versus Broken Blade in most of the games. And it wasn't until he would try to help his team, because I mean the rest of the map is collapsing, there would be one time where he would like TP out of his lane, or they would be doing a swap and he would like have to like burn his ult or his flash or something in order to save a situation or just try to like affect the game in some way. And after that is when BB would like get a solo kill. It wasn't like Wonder was just 1v1 dying for no reason, or he like got outplayed when he had everything up. So to me, that just shows like how comfortable he is. And then, I mean, the thing that I thought was so valuable for Fnatic is Oscar plays more of like a carry style. Like, he wants to play like Jax or GP or Rumble or like some of these types of champions. He's not the type of guy that wants to just play, you know, 4 or 5 games of Renekton Orin. And I thought that what was so good for Fnatic was the fact that Wonder made everyone's job so much easier. He's just going to play a top lane champion that's really strong in the meta, that doesn't need attention. He's going to like win his lane, and then also like he'll be ready to help the team. So you don't have to consider him in the game. It makes the game so much easier for Fnatic to just consider 2 lanes and like what needs to be done around like bot or mid and play around there and not have to worry about like Wonder's lane at all in any of the games, which, you know, I think was a benefit to them. So obviously you can't know if Oscar would have played better than Wonder, but I'm in the same boat where I just think that like Wonder most likely performed better than Oscar would have in these situations.
I mean, that's not even, like I said, we're not even giving a diss to the Oscar guy. 1, Wonder played really well. I mean, he's made a reason he fucking won a game in this series. And then 2, it's a final on a stage for a rookie. Like, I'd have to see that happen. By the way, it's why I actually, earlier in this episode, gave props to Yike, actually. I think, bearing in mind, like, you wouldn't actually know this was the first, like, big stage match or whatever. Or, I mean, I played MSI, but you know what I mean? Like, he looked great, mate. He looked just fucking good. Had a great series in general. By the way, one thing I'll also say as well, I actually low-key hate to have to say this, though, is I have to actually say Humanoid played pretty well this weekend, mate. He played well against Mad Lions. He had some big games. He actually played well in the final here against G2. The problem I have with that is this, Dom. It's like, that isn't that cool, though. That means for really was just fucking phoning it in all year. Because basically, I've heard behind the scenes, if people don't know, the word among actual players and coaches is they all think Humanoid is good still. They just think he like can't be asked, basically, unless it's like an important match, or if it's like some sort of like a regular season game. They think if like the game goes bad, he just doesn't give a shit and sort of says, I can't be asked, or just phones it in, or just fucking hints it, or whatever. I mean, I could almost believe it's true now, Dom. If I think how he played at Worlds last year after that year, and then I see how he's playing now in the matches that count. Like, he obviously is still good. Like, mate, his Syndra games were actually fucking banging. He was having some really good games there. Like, there's so many upsides, but like, I just hate the idea that like, so what was the rest of the year then? You know what I mean? I hate that.
Yeah, I personally, I don't know how to feel about Humanoid. I think the biggest issue for me is the champ pool that he's being forced to play right now, just because of what the mid meta is. It feels like none of his like really good champions. I mean, he's trying to work in the Syndra, but I mean, obviously they lost the first 2 games when he was playing Syndra into G2. And you saw like Syndra versus Jace. As soon as Jace gets Merc Treads against like AP jungler plus Syndra, the Syndra just can't even touch him anymore. And it makes the game really unplayable. I just feel like the meta is not...
Do you think they're overforcing the Syndra? Because even though he is clearly good on it, like me, he has no fucking mobility, and he obviously has no, like, he had the fucking, it's just like teleport and flash, so he's getting banged, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the fact of the matter is this, like, Syndra is a champion that wants to be paired with AD junglers. Like, ideally, when Syndra has been good at periods throughout League of Legends, it's always been Syndra Lee Sin, Syndra Rek'Sai, Syndra Viego. Like, they just want an early game ganking jungler so Syndra can set it up with stuns and you can just play through, like, 2v2s. And right now, there's almost no AD junglers in the meta. If you look at what the meta is right now for jungle, it's Ivern, Maokai. Sejuani has a portion physical, but also gets fucked by Merc Treads, so it's another champion that just incentivizes Merc Treads, which hurts both of them. Yeah, Ivern, Rel.
Yeah, it's everything, yeah.
Rel, like, Poppy is AD, but like it also is a champion that's not the best mid ganker in the world. It's not like a damaged 2v2 mid ganker the same way like Lee Sin or Rek'Sai or one of these champions is. So when you look at the entire meta, and then you also consider like Talia is being played jungle, Karthus is being played jungle, there's just no champions that pair well with the Syndra. So even if Syndra is decent right now, which I don't really think Syndra is, I think it's just a bad time for it given what the other champions are. It seems like right now the best champions mid lane are, you know, Azir, things that are self-sufficient, Tristana, LeBlanc. Like, you just kind of want something with mobility mid that's going to be self-sufficient and just show up later in team fights and be, you know, useful.
Yes. By the way, I also agree that you didn't throw in Jace there, because like at this point in time, Jace is like fucking what Nidalee jungle was like 3 years ago. It's like, if you're the best in the world, it's the sickest shit ever. If you're not,
don't even
play it. Don't even play it. You won't even be able to do any of this shit. So don't waste our time. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, Caps played a pretty good Jace game, but
yeah,
I think it's it's just not I wouldn't say it's a power pick in EU or NA right now. It's something where, like, if the draft sets up for it and like you have a Maokai Jace angle and it's really free and it's good for the game, pick it. But it's not the same way that it is in China and Korea, where it's like, oh, Jace is up, we pick Jace like 1-2 no matter what. Like, it's not that level of champion. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I think of Humanoid, the 2 champions that I always thought he was exceptional on were Orianna and Victor. And neither of those champions are in the meta right now. And, you know, control mages, like, they're just playing different. Like, if you think about what Azir is now, Azir is not a lane dominant champion. I felt like that was Humanoid's big strength, is that he would take control mage versus control mage matchups and then just be dominating like both sides of the matchup. He'd be up 10, 20 CS in 1v1s versus other players that were good at like control mages. Like, for example, the final that he had versus Larson in 2021 spring. Like, that was one where like the first two games were all about, you know, like Humanoid's just lane prowess at that point. So, yeah, I just think that right now, like the way the champions interact, I just don't think he gets that much value. He's always been kind of spotty when it comes to team fights. Like, sometimes he team fights well, sometimes he dies early, sometimes he goes for a play that like isn't really there. But his laning phase was the key to, you know, his dominance in like the era where he was really, really good. So it just seems like there's a combination of things that make it, you know, not like make it so he can't really show how good he really is. And one of those things is the meta.
Because I actually low-key think that when people watch this final, I don't even think Fnatic played that bad, mate. Like, they had some moments that clearly weren't as good. Like, essentially for me, they were just completely, what you would say in, like, Sports Cup, they were covered. Like, every single strength they had, G2's better at than them. Like, for example, they tried on some games, you could tell, Dom, after the first game, they tried to, like, accelerate early and go for some players. Almost never fucking worked. Their players backfire. They get killed themselves. They get it turned on them. Like, the joke is, if you want to see, like, how hard it is to play G2, watch the fucking Mad Lions series of Fnatic. Like, Trimby's fucking smurfing on him, mate. He looks awesome in that one. His fucking Alistair looks beasting. Then when he tries it against G2, it's like, it's nothing. Like, if anything, he's the one getting killed if he goes for a play. He's the one getting turned on. Like, that just shows how the gap there, because Mickey's just too fucking cracked. Fucking Humanoid was all right, but Capsules had a really good series. And like I said about the junglers, Razork could never get a game, mate. He had like, one game that was like reasonable start, because he's always back. Like, he's got lanes that are behind, and fucking Yike outplays him, and like it's fucking ahead early in the game, and they get kills. Like, I don't know what more people want Fnatic to do. And then lastly, like, Fnatic is all split long. One thing I've been impressed with is they actually do like go in together, mate. This G2 team, they showed it in this final. They're probably easily the best team at re-engage. Like, their fucking timing of when to pursue a fight, when to like turn a fight, they're too good, mate. Like, I watched this final. I wasn't even hating up for, like, I was actually like, you were all right. You were all right in this final for me.
I mean, I think that Fnatic just capped out. When you think about all their other series, like, they showed everything, right? Like, they had to play extra series, and they just showed everything they had. Yep. They had the Talia and the Karthus pick. People figured out that the Karthus can only be paired with Tristana, so Tristana is banned against them. They don't have the whole arsenal of AD carry champions that G2 has. Like, G2, like, if they end up in a world with a bunch of AD carry bans and there's no Xayah, Kai'Sa, all this stuff, then it's going to be advantage G2, because G2 can play the Kog'Maw, they can play the Kalista, they can play the Draven, and if you ban all those champions, that means that other OP champions for G2 are going to be left up. So I think that Fnatic just got figured out, and by the end, they just had nothing left. Like, what other champions could they pick? Syndra, they tried, didn't end up working. Like, they had already shown their prio on Renekton, so like if they're getting it in the series, it's not going to be paired with something really OP. The Talia is being put into like suboptimal situations, because obviously G2 knows that Fnatic likes Talia so much. And yeah, I mean, just overall, like, they just aren't as good on the super strong meta champions as G2 are. So Fnatic just, it felt like by the end, it's like, that's the advantage. People always say, what's the advantage from going from winning the winner's bracket, or like winning the winner final? Yeah. Like, you don't get to get double elimination. Everyone else gets double elimination. Like, this is the advantage theoretically, is that you get to watch another team play extra series. And when they play all these extra series, you should be able to take away something about like what their prios really are if they are challenged. I mean, obviously, if it's just them stomping a team that's inferior to them 3-0, you're not going to get much out of that. But it felt like G2 really had Fnatic downloaded by this final, and they understood not just what Fnatic plays, but when they could give really strong champions that Fnatic really likes, in what context they could actually let those champions through. Because it felt like a lot of other teams were just like, fuck it, we don't want to deal with it, we'll just ban those champions. But the way that G2 actually brought it back was they gave the champions that Fnatic was good at to them, but in situations where those champions wouldn't be very effective. And then Fnatic is stuck between, do we play what we're like winning on, or that like the champions that we really like, or do we just have to like, you know, leave those champions up and play things that we're worse at, and try to just like have a better theoretical draft.
Like, the one player I do think did have some problems was, I do think like Trimby did have some ints though. He had a few where like sort of went for a player that I think he had a little bit of choke in him, mate. It wasn't egregious, but he had some deaths that were a bit off.
I mean, he had like what, like a 9 or 10 death game in there. Like, it was.
He'd had a few that were bad.
Ones.
a few that
He has some bad ones.
I definitely agree on the point about, like, essentially, like, Dylan Falco has always been good at drafting. Like, if people don't know, spoiler, I might have some content on this future. You'll actually find out that some of the teams where he looked like he was draft capped, it was certain players not being able to play stuff. But in this version of G2, not only has he already done an awesome job all year long and all split long, like you're saying, bro, he's played 8 games in the upper bracket. They had to play 15 Fnatic before they reached the final. Like, that's outrageous, dude. Almost twice as many games. Like, at that point, like, Fnatic already had a worse draft. Like, as you say, you're going to be completely figured out. Like, you've essentially shown every variation. I mean, when you were saying even then that, like, essentially you knew what the G2 can play that, like, Fnatic can't. Like, you think it's not in fucking Fnatic's head when they have to do, like, a Kalista ban. Like, that Kazi just fucking ass-wrecked them in that fucking previous series. Of course it is. Like you say, everything had been seen. By the way, on that issue, but I tell you what, we'll get to that in a second. Actually, one thing I do want to ask you is this, a potentially controversial question, Dom, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Right? People might know I'm not like a big fan of Medic. Now, I'm not a hater either. I think he's an above average caster. I think at times he's good. I actually do think, obviously, he even has a nostalgia quality on LEC. Now, he's done it for many years. He is one of the voices of the broadcast. I did think in this final, though, Dom, I think he forced it a bit. Because one problem I've noticed, it actually seems to mainly be a League of Legends problem, is I feel like when people do finals, they're so horny to try and create like the sound bite, you know, like that moment. Yeah, you know, like, and this is like, it's like the one that fucking Dracos famously did when they won MSI, you know, and this is like the best League of Legends in the world or whatever, and it comes from Europe or whatever the fuck that one was, all about beating T1 or some shit. Like it all sounds good. The problem is though, if you try and force it, like every time you don't hit, for me, because I've done a lot of broadcast stuff, it's always a bit like, ooh. What did you think? Do you see what I'm talking about? Are you not seeing this angle? What do you think?
I mean, I didn't listen to the actual broadcast since I was like live doing it.
Actually, true. Okay.
So I'm not sure exactly what it was. I mean, in general, I've thought that Medic was like pretty good. Like I'm a pretty big fan of his casting. Like I think that he's probably the best play-by-play. I mean, it's him or Dracos, right? I mean, I would rather listen to Medic. I don't know. There's something about I guess his voice just like hypes me up, you know, like I just like a lot of the things that he says. Also, I really appreciate play-by-play casters that learn the fucking game, you know, that play the game to a high level. Sure. It's something that I've always valued a lot when it comes to like play-by-plays. Like Captain Flowers actually got master tier, Medic got master tier, and I think that actually elevates your casting. You don't need to defer to your color for a bunch of stuff. You can actually just analyze the game yourself, maybe not on as high of a level, but like your baseline is so much higher. So I've always respected him for that as well. So I didn't listen to his cast, but when I have listened to his cast before, I mean, I've always thought he was a good caster.
All I would say is this, I would just give him one piece of advice, which is just let it breathe a bit more. Because basically what he started doing in a lot of the big games was he just sort of like kept it at a 10 at fever pitch instead of letting it come down again. And he was shouting a lot. Like, I think that's a big problem. Because to me, you want some like up and down. You want some difference in the pitch. So you don't want to just be up here all the time. Like, and they're doing this, and then they're doing this, and now they're doing this. Like, you got to flow a little bit more. If he does that, I think he'll have it sorted. He's pretty good in general.
I mean, look, I didn't listen to, like I said, I didn't listen to cast, but you know what I did listen to is that fucking the performance at the beginning, the opening ceremony.
Garbage on it. Come on, mate. By the way,
I gotta auto-tune that shit.
This doesn't happen to you guys much in League. I mean, you don't actually have as many events, but this is a thing in Counter-Strike that we hate because unfortunately ESL, who does most of the Counter-Strike events, they had a whole bunch of years in CSGO where when they would do an event like this and it would be like the Sunday, because there'd be nothing else on except like a show match in the final, they would do this. They'd have like a music act, but it's always like this, someone you've never fucking heard of. And the problem was, it was just whatever, wasn't it? Like, I mean, maybe if someone liked that band, they enjoyed it. But what I didn't get was, it's a bit egregious, isn't it, to make people listen to music you've never heard before, ever. Like, what's the odds we're going to vibe with it on the first listen live in an awkward, like, gaming tournament? You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like, what's the point of this? Like, what are we doing? I get the idea of doing a stage show. That's cool. But here's the thing, Tom. If anything, I wouldn't do music. I would have got something like, people are going to think I'm joking, but I'm not actually being sarcastic. I would genuinely get, like, some circus shit. And I don't mean that because of the whole Cloud and Fiesta. I mean, for real, like, I would have something cool, like, you know, like some Cirque du Soleil shit going on. That would be cool to watch. Something visual, you know, like someone do like a trapeze thing or whatever. I don't want to see some shit Eurovision Song Contest type. And then also, wasn't some of the lyrics in French as well? So who gives a shit, man?
Well, I mean, number one, it's like,
I mean, I know a little bit, but I'm not going to fucking listen to it, am I?
it's a cover of like a song that a lot of people know in the League of Legends community, which was like a huge like hit with, and like it was really nostalgic for viewers. So number one, it's like dangerous to go there and start like, you know, covering like Awaken, Rise, any of the ones
that's like a world song or something. Exactly. Yeah.
So that was tough. And then number two, just the pitch was off. Like, I mean, I don't want to be like, obviously I was a music major in college
for sure. Yeah.
Number one, she's singing it about like an octave lower than it actually is. So it already sounds like off, you know, because like to bring it into her range, I mean, she has just a lower voice, right? So to bring it into her range, she has to pitch it down a lot. But then she was just like flat almost the entire time. Like she was just off key the entire time. And I was like, I don't know, like, who do you think like, why are we not auto tuning this? Like some of like the best singers in the world, like they have like a background tracking.
Yeah, even live they do it. You're right.
Yeah, of course. So like, we're just gonna let it fucking let it rip on stage and just hope that it turns out well. I don't know, man. It was a little too much for me. I can't believe it.
I only meant like your opinion, but you actually started trying to break it down like it was League. Like that, she needs to make common octave. Thing is, in that matchup with the like the tuba, you've got to go like an octave down. They're like, let's get like LS in here. Like, well, it's a bit like Pythagoras' theorem back in Itch and Greasing.
Yeah, man. Like, I don't know. Like, I'll tell you why it was bad. You know, like it's not like I was just like, oh, it's bad because I didn't like it. Like, no, like it was bad, like objectively. If you listen to it, everyone knows it's off, which is why like everyone in the crowd like was just dead. They're just like staring there, like no one's hype. And that crowd was generally pretty fucking hype.
Like, give a fuck at all.
And then like, and it's in France and it's in French. So like even the French crowd was like, yeah, we don't fuck with this at all. Like we just wish it didn't happen. So I don't know. I feel like the amount of misses that we've had have been just like, you think about the Jax Anderson one, the one with like all the fucking tongue movement, that one like random lady from like in Detroit. We've had just some horrible misses.
Why did that have to happen? Like everyone knows what he's talking about. Please tell me you remember that LCS finals that he's talking about, like this, because that song, she was so into it, dude. You could tell she thought it was like, she thought it was like the greatest like performance of her life. And unfortunately, that one also like had it, like was like really off the pitch or something when it like something was really off with it. I remember like it just sounded really bad live, unfortunately. I remember the one sadly the second you said that, it immediately came into my mind again. I'd like deleted that, mate.
Yeah, no, it's like I mean, it was also just weird because it was like she's not somebody that she's not popular. The only reason she was there is that she was also from Detroit, which I don't know why people think that that's like such a big thing. They're like, okay, we're gonna have like the French singer in France and it's gonna like bang, and it's like, well, I mean, if you just have any like popular singer there that actually is singing well, it'd probably go better. And like the Detroit thing, it's like Americans aren't even like that anyway. Like there is like obviously national pride in France. I don't, like if I'm in Miami and there's a singer from Miami and they're garbage, I'm not gonna be like repping them just because I'm fucking from Miami. Like we don't do that shit, like really. So unless they're like an iconic artist, like they don't get that pass, you know, they can't just be bad at their job. So yeah, I don't know, man, that performance, I had to say something on it because it was truly awful.
Oh, fair play. I also thought the same thing. I actually even made the mistake of like watching the first part of it on like the VOD, and I was like, what am I even watching this for? It's a VOD, I'll just skip past it. It's like, so after 2 minutes, I didn't have to listen anymore. Brilliant. That's why it's good to watch VODs, guys. By the way, one thing I will say, because we should touch a little bit on the Mad Lions Fnatic series as well. Mate, I can't believe I have to say it again, but I have to say it again. Carsey's actually really fucking good now, mate. He's actually just good. Like he was doing his best, like fucking Crowdy and BDS or upsetting the old Fnatic impression where he's just hard carrying the fuck out of these games. Like he actually just won't lose, mate. Fair play. Yeah. I know part of it is obviously like the meta's sort of like, it's like his style of play, but also, mate, he's just way cleaner now. Like he just doesn't do those stupid ass hints early on that he used to do. This is more like the player that when he came along in 2020, I actually was excited when he first came into LEC, mate. I remember thinking like, hey, especially, I mean, sadly, because Kaiser also was good back then. Yeah, I remember thinking back then, like, this bot lane's pretty interesting, actually. Like, and then for me, he just lost his way for a few years. Now he's just really good, mate. Actually, again, just like Crowny and BDS, just props. What a fucking beast.
Yeah, I mean, Carsey's played really well. I mean, he's part of the reason they were actually able to make top 3. He was the main reason. I'd also say that, like, I mean, he heavily outperformed Noah over the course of the series. Yeah. Like, he just was the better AD.
Weakened in general, mate. He looked a bit off his game. He was right, but he was just a bit off his game for me.
I mean, he seems like a pretty emotional player. You could see, like, after the game, you know, he was tweeting about how that game 4 that he played versus Mad Lions was like the worst game that he's ever played, you know, in his life. So
I mean, he's a rookie, so I give him a pass, you know. I give him a pass.
Yeah, I mean, he's a rookie. the thing that's weird is that he's so different in these clutch moments. That's the thing that bothers me. He's so different as a player than he was at the beginning of the year. When you, or the beginning of the split. When you think about the beginning of summer, his whole thing was not dying, right? Like that was what everyone was hyping up. He had like 70 kills and 1 death, and everyone was like, oh my god, he's like the promised 170 KDA, he's unkillable. And then he had games where he's dying like 8-9 times a game. It's like, what the fuck? Like, how are you the same player? You didn't die 8 times in like the first fucking 9 games you played. Like, how did you end up dying this much in this game? So that's the thing that worries me about Noah, is that he just looks so much different under pressure. It's not like he's playing like a little bit worse. It's like his whole playstyle completely changed, which I don't know what to really say about that.
Also, for me, like in this series, that game 5 was on a fucking knife edge, mate. Let's be real. If you actually go back and watch that one, the game's basically lost because Mad fucked up that top re-engage. You know, when they got Dove top and they initially survived it. Like, mate, I don't know what the perfect timing was, whether you had to, like, wait for fucking the TP to come in, whether Niski had to hold off a bit longer. I think off the top of my head, like, Elyoya didn't help Niski out or whatever. Like, that was just, like, what you call it, a cavalcade of errors. Like, if they did that right, Dom, I think they win the game. I think they would have been ahead. They would have, like, a fucking good position. They just, in the end, didn't they just, like, die, lose 2 kills and get nothing out of it? Something ridiculous. Like, that seemed like that nerves got to them in that, I think, mate. I actually thought they should have been the team that was in the final. Like, I thought if they held it together, they could have won this game 5.
I mean, I think that they should have just changed their draft in that game. I hated, I tweeted about it after, but the main takeaway that I had is that...
It was about the Ivern or something, right?
Is giving them Ivern over Jace. Like, we just talked about Humanoid's Jace and how, like, he shouldn't, like, be playing it most of the time. I mean, his record on it is, like, actually pretty good, but if you consider the amount of Jace games that he's looked, like, good in individually...
It doesn't check out at all, mate. No, exactly.
The eye test doesn't check out. And when you think about what Mad Lions is best at as a team, it feels like they're just like the engage team. They're good at coming from angles and like finding engages, and they're all like really willing to commit to a play. Like they have, I mean, if you have Hilly, Niski, Karzi, Chasey all on the same team, you're just going to be able to find like plays. They understand when somebody's inting and they go for it. I mean, sometimes they miscalculate, but wouldn't that be a strength that is conducive to playing against Jace? Like Jace is a champion that is susceptible to what Mad Lions is really good at. And when you consider what Ivern does, Ivern is the champion that's really fucking hard to do that against, because you're walking into brushes, you're losing vision, you're getting shields, redemption, like all this shit is coming out. So when I was looking at this draft, I'm like, I don't know why Mad Lions' read was that the Jace was actually a problem. Like, I don't think the Jace was actually a problem. They beat the Jace earlier. You know, Jace Karthus is something that Fnatic had not won with yet. They tried it a couple times, but they haven't won with it yet. So when I'm looking at all the options, I felt so weird about giving Razork Ivern, because it feels like his Ivern was his best champion. It feels like he would play it every single game if he was allowed to.
By the way, one thing I do have to ask you about, though, is this is a point that Monty made when I was actually big. Like, I was bigging up the fact that, like, actually Razork, if you look at his year now, mate, in the context of how dodgy the first lineup was, he's actually had a very good year. Like, he's actually, like, right back for me, almost to where he was, like, before he joined Fnatic, where he was just a player I was quite hyped about. Had good mechanics, had a couple of champions he's really good on, has an aggressive playing style. But the funny thing that Monty pointed out is, even though in this final, like, Razork in general was good, and all in all good, and Humanoid played fine, they still have no synergy at all, bro. Like, they don't even do anything together on the map. Like, I don't know how they're making it work in Fnatic. Like, fair play, because both players are all right or good again, but like, they just don't have any connection as players. Like, you're still gonna have to pick one of those players for me. You can't keep them together. There's no point. It's a waste of time. They'd be better in other teams. They'd just be better with other players, wouldn't they? Come on.
I mean, one thing that we keep on talking about is how, like, mid jungle right now, there's like no synergy between the roles. Like when it was a Vi Ahri meta, right? You'd be able to see what Vi Ahri could do together. It was always Vi hitting level 6, going mid, Ahri would ult, or they would like play a fight together. They would get the reset for Ahri. They would win the fight together. Right now, the meta is like picking a useless tank jungler and then also pairing it with a mage, and they don't need to interact at all. So theoretically, this is like the best meta that they could ever be a part of, you know?
And for the weakness, yeah.
Well, because they don't have to interact. Like, you don't actually need to play around mid the same way you did before.
But yeah, to me, like that's it just shows that like there'll just always be this fundamental flaw of those two players in the team. But like, I don't know who they should go and swap with, but like I feel like there's so many options that surely both would be better. You know what I mean? Just put them in different teams at this point. By the way, I have to say as well, Like, I understand there's still the thing where, like, who knows what happens to a humanoid in his contract and all that. If I had to pick between the two, though, Dom, I would definitely pick Razork. If I'm Fnatic, that's the player I'm keeping. And we'll just get another mid laner. It's all good. We'll just get another mid laner. Would you do the same?
I mean, I think Razork is good. Even when he was like inting almost every single game, he's always been a player that I just think has the talent. You know, like he just I mean, he plays when you see him have good games, you're like, okay, this guy is
his ceiling is really impressive. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, his ceiling is really impressive. And also it just seems like he cares more. Like he's kind of like the soul of that team. Even if you watch like the reviews and stuff, like he's the one who like backstage is like, yo, like we needed to do this. Why did we do this instead? Like he's the one that's like really trying to push the team forward. It feels like. So yeah, I mean, I've always fucked with players more like that than like the guy where I'm like, is he like griefing us on purpose or like what the fuck is going on? You know, like that's how you feel with humanoid. Like I don't like ego players, and Razork seems just like he has, you know, less of an ego and he cares more about the actual, you know, results of the games.
Oh, one more thing we should actually definitely discuss. Let me get your thoughts on that discussion we had with Peter Dunn a couple of episodes ago. So obviously now we know who it is. It's actually BDS that will play Golden Guardians. Now, he even said, Dom, specifically that he thinks BDS will beat Golden Guardians. Because if you remember, he had said that he thought that, like, I mean, assuming people like Striker and they get one guy, he thinks that, like, the coaching staff of BDS is good and that basically they'll just figure out the way I mean, people have sort of solved it in NA, how you beat Golden Guardians in BO5. What do you think? Are you taking BDS to win this one?
I have no idea. I'm like thinking about it. It's really hard to say. Like, I feel like BDS should win. You know, like BDS should win, but I can see angles for like why Golden Guardians can win. Like the angles for Golden Guardians, at least for me, the biggest angle for Golden Guardians is the fact that like River and Gory, if they play well together, if they play like they were before playoffs, I think that there's just going to be a big issue with the mid jungle of BDS. When you think about Sheo and Nuck, a lot of their like games are just, you know, them playing champions and just trying to stabilize mid. They don't really want to fight. They don't really want to move together. And it's all about like bot lane and top lane. Like Adam absorbing pressure early, smashing his lane with some like hard carry champion, and then objective control. I think if the games are neutral, and the reason why I guess I would give a slight advantage to BDS is if the games are neutral, BDS has better objective setups. They're just, and that's how they did so well in LEC. They're just always first on the objective. They get to the objective first. They put down wards. They're ready to engage. They're ready. They know when to do the Drake compared to like when to, you know, peel off and play for a fight. They just play objectives better than almost anyone else in LEC, which I think is a huge advantage when it comes to actually playing, you know, these types of best of 5 matches that are really uncomfortable. You want the players, you want like the high baseline. You don't want to have to rely on like players having good days or something like that. So yeah.
Because the problem I have is this. I actually really thought before it ended up that Golden Guardians did finish 4th. I even said on some of the Insight like ages ago, like if somehow Golden Guardians end up 4th and they're the team in the playoff, like LEC's fucked. Like, because actually Golden Guardians, if people don't know, for most of the split, they actually had the highest floor of any NA team. Like even Cloud9 was more fucking up and down and could enter game. Golden Guardians looked pretty good in the split. I have to say, mate, the problem is it's the way that they lost in the playoffs in LCS. It's destroyed all my fucking confidence. Because like you say, the two main players that's supposed to be the strength are obviously fucking Gory and River. Mate, River looked absolute shit most of the whole playoffs. And then the Gory guy, like, what a weak mid pool, and he just like fucking withered, mate. It's sad. It's just sad, isn't it? Yeah, like what the hell? Like if those players play the way they did in spring, they easy win this series. We'll see them at Worlds, no problem. The problem is, I'm really scared for him, mate, because I don't even know that much about the coaching side. I won't say that's like my angle, but my angle's like this, Dom. First of all, Crown Shot is easily gapping his role in this matchup. And then if you go to the other side, like, mate, Licorice is all right, but I could see a world where Adam does just fucking carry a couple of games. Like, I want to see if Licorice could deal with him for this whole best of 5, mate. People might know I'm an Adam skeptic, but this is someone he could beat, mate. He could beat this guy in lane. Like, I think this is going to be an interesting match. I think I'll favor BDS, but slightly. I think I'll go with them. I think they will win it, mate. I'm going to say they do.
Yeah, I think that they're the safer pick. I mean, it's just so hard to believe in Golden Guardians when their biggest strength was like their biggest weakness. Like Gory had an awful,
sad, so sad.
He had an awful like just time in playoffs. And when I was watching him, I wondered because there was a couple times where like in interviews he stated like his biggest goal was to like get to Worlds. Like he really wanted to like go to Worlds. And I wonder if like the pressure of like playing the matches that involved going to Worlds was just too much for him because he was so like set on that being like the main like the main goal of like the entire year. So I don't know if he's just like, if he was choking under pressure, exactly what it was, but he looked like a completely different player. It was very hard to watch him play and just be like, yeah, it's the same guy. Because their whole strength, like we said, was mid jungle. River was massive the entire year, and then Gory was able to like take the advantages, and they would just go and run the whole map, and they knew how to fight better than anyone else. Like they were the team that played the most like an LPL team in North America, where they would just like constantly fight. They understood a concept that no other NA team understood, including Cloud9, which was how to like fight in what people consider like the neutral or whatever, but fight when nothing is up to burn summoners to prepare for like a better fight in the future. A lot of like that's a core part of LPL. Is people say, oh, they fight all the time. It's like, no, that's actually just a really smart time to fight. If it's 18 minutes, there's no Drake, there's no Baron on the table, and you can start a fight where you burn like 2-3 flashes for the next one, even if you have people die, that is going to be more of an advantage than the gold that they're going to get in the immediate. Like people just don't understand that, and Golden Guardians actually did understand that, and it was very obvious because they would take very deliberate like 5-man fights in these pockets of time where there was nothing up. And I thought that was going to translate really well internationally, but obviously like when they just play like shit a bunch of games in a row, it's very hard to think that like, yeah, they're just going to be able to get it together again. It just feels like it feels like a coin flip betting on them.
Oh, by the way, one other thing I should also ask, because obviously we're not going to be doing Worlds, like that'll be Summon Insight and Power Spike and all these other shows, right? One thing I do want to ask you is obviously Mad Lions will be going to Worlds as the 3rd seed, etc. Right? I'll tell you one thing that's my concern here, Don. We talked on the past episodes, like I don't think Chasey can hold up. El Yoya hasn't looked great the last few fucking months at this point in time, but the actual one that I'm worried about, mate, is where the fuck is Hylissang gone? Where the hell is Hylissang? Like, I'm supposed to be able now, Dom, just like I'm with Mickey X, to be like, hey, this is actually a player that could be better than his Asian counterpart. He's more experienced. He's been there. He's had the wins. He's got the mechanics. Like, the problem is, like, Hylissang actually feels like he's sort of just fucking, like, just been non-existent for the last, like, month or so. Like, what's going on with this guy, mate? What do you think?
I'm really not sure, because this is like a meta that suits him very well.
His champions, in it? Like, it's fucking everything's in there. The Ricard, the Pikes, all the shit. You want it, mate? Play it. Come on.
Yeah, and Karzi's playing well too, so you can't even say like, oh, maybe he just like doesn't trust his AD or anything. So you can't blame Karzi. I have no idea what's going on. I mean, I think it's just how Hilly is. Like Hilly has been inconsistent for a while now. If you go back and you look at last year in spring, he was considered like borderline MVP candidate, and then in summer he had his worst split that he's probably ever had. Period. So I think it's just par for the course with Hilly. He's just, I don't know, he just goes through peaks and valleys, like very significant peaks and valleys too.
Let me ask you this then, as like sort of a final question, right? Do you think actually that Mad Lions can get some upsets? Can they give us some BO1 excitement? Like, do you think they're actually big name teams they could take the scalp off? Like, if Mad Lions players like a T1 or Weibo, I'm obviously picking up the weaker ones in theory. Like, can they like get a BO1 scalp? You think?
I mean, they can, but I think it's pretty unlikely.
It's saying a lot if Dom has to hesitate that much on. I even put T1 there as like just to try and bait him in, just to see if he'd be like, oh yeah.
No, I mean, look.
Even then, he had belief in T1. Okay.
T1 is really hard. T1's probably one of the worst ones, right? Because if you think about the fact that they played them at MSI, think about how MSI looked. Think about their game 1. They were dominating with such a big lead. They were playing the Pike. They had like 10k gold lead, and they still couldn't close that out. So.
Oh, so psychologically, you think that's like the fucking nemesis?
I just think that I don't think that was a like freak accident. I think that there is a just big issue with how Mad Lions carries their leads out through games. Like they just make big mistakes, and if they make those big mistakes versus top teams, they just lose the game. Like they're not going to be able to contend. So, no, I mean, I think that Mad Lions just won't make it out of Swiss. I think they'll have a pretty disappointing performance.
Fair enough. Right, okay, well, that's the last you will see of us on this particular show. But of course, tune in and find out what Dom thinks on Power Spike, and I'll be on Summoning Insight all throughout Worlds. See you then.